The auction happened on a Thursday. I was 23 years old, standing in my father's study, staring at a contract that listed me as collateral, and my mother was crying on the velvet chaise lounge. My older brother Victor was pacing by the window, refusing to look at me. My younger sister Celia was scrolling through her phone, utterly indifferent to the transaction being conducted 3 feet away. And my father, Edmund Vance, was explaining to me, calmly, rationally, why I needed to marry a man I had never met. The sterling debt has matured, my father said, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a man who had spent 30 years commanding boardrooms and ruining lives. $20 million plus interest. If we don't pay by the end of the quarter, we lose everything. The house, the company, the foundation, everything. Then sell the house. My voice was steady. I had learned to be steady in this house, where emotion was weakness and silence was survival. Sell the company. You have assets. The assets are leveraged. The liquidity is gone. Our credit is destroyed. And O Bank will lend us another $1. But the Sterling family has made an offer. He pushed the contract across the desk. Adrian Sterling's youngest grandson, Nicholas, he's 34, never married. He's seen your photograph and agreed to a meeting. If the meeting goes well, the marriage will clear the debt and give us an additional line of credit. The Sterling family is worth $40 billion. This is not a negotiation, Elara. This is a lifeline. Nicholas Sterling, that I knew the name, everyone knew the name. The Sterling family was one of the wealthiest dynasties in the world, their fortune built on railroads, steel, and real estate. Nicholas was the youngest of 3 grandsons, known primarily for his appearances in tabloids, yacht parties, nightclub openings, a string of relationships with actresses and models. He was handsome. He was charming. He was, by all accounts, hollow. And I was being sold to him. No, I said. My mother's crying stopped. Victor's pacing stopped. Celia looked up from her phone for the first time in an hour. My father's expression did not change at all. I wasn't asking, he said. You're asking me to marry a stranger. A man I've never met. A man who has seen my photograph and agreed to a meeting. I'm not a piece of art to be auctioned off at Sotheby's. I'm your daughter. You are a Vance, my father said coldly. And Vances do what is necessary. What is necessary for whom? For Victor, who gambled away $2 million in Macau last year. For Celia, who crashed a Lamborghini she never paid for. For you and Mother, who have been living beyond your means since before I was born. I am not the one who created this debt. I am the one who has been paying for it my entire life. The room went very still, because I had never spoken like this before. I had been the obedient daughter, the quiet middle child, the one who stayed home while Victor partied and Celia flitted through Europe. I had finished college in 3 years. I had started a small business, an online boutique that sold sustainable fashion, while my siblings drained the family accounts. And now I was being told that my reward for a lifetime of responsibility was to be sold to the highest bidder. The meeting is tomorrow, my father said, as if I hadn't spoken.
Noon.
The Sterling estate in Greenwich. Wear something appropriate. Or what? You'll disown me? No, I'll let the creditors take everything, including your business, your accounts, your apartment, everything you've built. He leaned forward, his eyes hard. You think you're independent, Elara? You think you've built something separate from this family? Every dollar you've earned started with a roof I provided. Every connection you've made was through a name I gave you. You are not separate from this family. You are this family, and this family is drowning. So you'll go to Greenwich tomorrow, and you will meet Nicholas Sterling, and you will do whatever is necessary to save us. I looked at my mother. She was already looking away. I looked at Victor. He was studying the carpet. I looked at Celia. She had gone back to her phone. I was alone in a room full of people who had never seen me as anything but a resource. Fine, I said. I'll meet him, but I'm not making any promises. You'll make whatever promises are necessary. My father stood up. This meeting is a formality. The deal is already in motion. Nicholas has agreed to the terms. The only question is whether you'll cooperate or be dragged. I turned and walked out of the study. Behind me, I heard my mother's crying resume, softer now, as if someone had turned down the volume on her grief. Victor started pacing again. Celia's phone buzzed with a notification, and I climbed the stairs to my room, closed the door, and stood in the darkness, wondering what it would feel like to be someone else, someone free, someone who had never been a Vance. The Sterling estate in Greenwich was the largest private residence I had ever seen. It sprawled across 50 acres of manicured gardens, its limestone facade glowing in the afternoon sun like something out of a period drama. I was escorted through a marble foyer, past a library that stretched 2 stories, through a conservatory filled with orchids, and into a formal drawing room where Nicholas Sterling was waiting. He was exactly as I had expected, tall, broad-shouldered, with the easy confidence of someone who had never been denied anything. His smile was practiced, and his handshake was firm, and when he offered me tea, I could see him cataloging my appearance with the same detached assessment he might give a horse he was considering purchasing. "Ilara Vance," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "You're even more beautiful than your photograph suggested. The cheekbones, the coloring you'll photograph beautifully at the wedding. The press will love you." "I haven't agreed to a wedding yet." His smile flickered just for a moment. "Of course. That's why we're meeting. To get to know each other. To see if we're compatible." Compatible? Is that what we're calling it? What would you call it? An acquisition to fear acquiring meet, and why father gets his debt cleared if I get a husband I didn't choose. And you get. What do you get exactly? A wife? A trophy? A woman who smiled at you over tea and agreed to be purchased? Nicholas set down his teacup. His expression shifted, not to anger, but to something more calculating. The charming mask slipped, and underneath it was something harder. "You're direct." "I appreciate that. Let me be direct in return. My grandfather is dying. He has been dying for 3 years, but now it's happening. He has a condition for my inheritance. I need to be married. Not engaged, married, before his death, which the doctor's estimate is 6 to 8 weeks away. If I'm not married when he dies, my share of the Sterling fortune goes into a trust controlled by my older brothers that I get nothing." "Nothing? $40 billion, and you get nothing." "I get an allowance, not a generous one, but I don't get controlled, I don't get power, and I want power." He leaned forward. "You're not the only one being sold. Ilara, I'm being sold to. By my grandfather, who wants to see me settled. By my brothers, who want to control my inheritance to be why a system that values heirs over individuals. We're both in the same position. The difference is, I'm offering you a partnership, not a caged, the partnership." "A partnership," I repeated. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we help each other. You marry me. You stand beside me at the press events. You play the role of the devoted wife. I an exchange. I clear your family's debt. I give you an allowance that will let you live however you want. I leave you alone. And after my grandfather dies and the inheritance is secured, we can quietly divorce. You walk away with $50 million and your freedom. I walk away with control of my fortune. Everyone wins." He made it sound so reasonable. So civilized, 0.2 people using each other to escape their respective cages. And maybe in some world it would have been. But I had spent my entire life being used by people who promised me things, and my father, who promised me love and gave me obligation, and my mother, who promised me protection and gave me silence. My siblings, who promised me loyalty and gave me indifference. I knew a cage when I saw one. Even a gilded cage was still a cage. And if I say no, then your family is bankrupted. Your father loses everything. Your mother loses everything. Your siblings lose everything. And you lose your business, your apartment, your independence. You walk away with nothing, and you watch your family crumble. He tilted his head. I'm not your enemy, Ilara. I'm your best option. The only question is whether you're smart enough to see it. I was smart enough, but I was also angry. Angry at my father for selling me. Angry at Nicholas for thinking he could buy me. Angry at a world that treated women like currency and called it civilization. And somewhere in that anger, Something crystallized, an idea, a plan, a way to turn this transaction into something else entirely. Fine, I said. I'll marry you on one condition. Name it. You don't just clear my family's debt, you buy it. You buy every single one of their obligations, every loan, every mortgage, every line of credit. You become their sole creditor. And you give me control of the debt. His eyes narrowed. Why would I do that? Because I'm not just going to be your wife. I'm going to be your partner. A real partner. And a real partner needs leverage. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, a different smile from before, colder, more interested. You want leverage over your own family. I want freedom, and freedom requires power. I've never had power. You're offering me a chance to get some. I'm asking you to make it real. I underestimated you. Everyone does. That's my advantage. He stood up and extended his hand. Then we have a deal. Welcome to the family, Elara. I shook his hand. I'm not joining your family. You're joining mine, and you're going to regret it. He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. The wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks later, an accelerated timeline that was explained to the press as a whirlwind romance. The story was that Nicholas and I had met at a charity gala, fallen in love at first sight, and couldn't bear to wait. The tabloids ate it up. MY father preened. MY mother cried happy tears. Victor and Celia were suddenly, cloyingly attentive. They all thought they had been saved. They didn't know what I knew. In the weeks before the wedding, I did my own research. I hired my own lawyer, using money Nicholas had given me for a trousseau. I discovered that the sterling debt my father was so terrified of, the $20 million, had been acquired by Nicholas 6 months earlier. He had bought the debt from the original creditors. He had engineered the crisis that forced my family to sell me. He wasn't just a predator. He was the predator. The entire thing, the debt, the ultimatum, the marriage, was a trap he had set. And I had walked into it. But I wasn't going to walk out. I was going to dismantle it from the inside. The wedding was held at the Sterling Estate in Greenwich, in a garden overlooking the Long Island Sound. 400 guests filled the white chairs. The flower arrangements alone cost more than my apartment. The bride wore a Vera long gown that weighed 12 pounds and sparkled like crushed ice. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, and she smiled for the cameras, and she looked exactly like a woman in love. She looked exactly like a woman who was about to burn everything down. At the altar, Nicholas took my hands. You look beautiful. The cameras are eating you up. So are the creditors. Your grandfather isn't here. His smile flickered. No! He's too ill. But my brothers are here. And my lawyers. And the entire Sterling board of directors. This wedding is as much a business transaction as it is a ceremony. I know. I smiled sweetly. That's why I invited someone you didn't expect. His brow furrowed. What are you talking about? The music stopped. The officiant cleared his throat, and the doors at the back of the garden opened, and a woman walked through. She was 73 years old, silver-haired, with a face that belonged on currency. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a black cane with a silver handle point for attorneys flanked her. She walked down the aisle with the unhurried confidence of someone who had been walking down aisles for decades, boardrooms, courtrooms, the corridors of power. She walked past the stunned guests, past Nicholas's brothers, past my father, who had gone the color of old paper. She walked directly to me. Aunt Margaret, I said, thank you for coming. Margaret Vance, my father's sister, the one my family never spoke of, the one who had broken with the Vances 30 years ago, smiled at me. You called that I came. It's been a long time since anyone in this family remembered I existed. Nicholas was staring. Aunt Margaret? I don't understand. Your father told me his sister was dead. My father lies. It's one of his core competencies. I turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce my aunt, Margaret Vance. She's the founder of Vance Capital, the largest independent investment firm on the Eastern Seaboard. She's also the woman who has been quietly buying up sterling debt for the past 6 months, just like Nicholas here has been quietly buying up Van's debt. It seems they've been competing without knowing it. Nicholas's face had gone very still. What is this? This is me finding out, I said. I found out about the debt, that I found out you engineered my family's crisis, that I found out everything. And I realized that if I was going to be a bargaining chip, I might as well choose who gets to bargain with me. Your grandfather isn't just dying, Nicholas. He's already signed the inheritance papers. He signed them 2 weeks ago, in a private meeting with his attorneys and with my aunt. The condition about your marriage was voided. You didn't need to marry me to get your inheritance. You just needed to prove you were responsible, but you didn't know that because your grandfather wanted to see what you would do under pressure, and what you did was buy a woman like she was property. You're lying. I'm not. I pulled a document from the bodice of my wedding dress. This is a copy of the revised trust agreement, signed by your grandfather and witnessed by my aunt. The inheritance is secured. Your brothers don't control it, and you're free from the condition, free from the marriage, free from me. He stared at the document, then at me, then at my aunt. Why? Why would you do this? Because I'm not a bargaining chip. I'm not a victim. I'm a Vance. And Vances don't get sold. We sell. I turned to face the crowd. M.Y. father was frozen, his face a mask of horror and confusion. M.Y. mother was clutching her pearls. Victor and Celia were staring with their mouths open. The guests were a sea of wide eyes and whispered speculation. For those of you who don't know me, I said, my name is Alara Vance. I was supposed to be the bride today, but I'm not getting married. Not to Nicholas Sterling, not to anyone. I'm announcing the formation of a new company, Vance and Sterling Capital, a merger between my aunt's firm and the Sterling family's investment portfolio. I will serve as co-chairwoman. My aunt will be CEO. And Nicholas will be given a junior partnership. If he wants it, he's not a bad businessman. He's just a bad person. And I think we can work with that. Nicholas stared at me. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance. You said we were in the same position. You were right. We were both being used. The difference is I decided to stop being used. You can decide too. He was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed, a genuine, surprised laugh. You're the most terrifying woman I've ever met. I know. That's why you're going to take the job. He took the job. The wedding turned into a merger celebration. The champagne that was supposed to toast my marriage toasted my company instead. My father tried to approach me, but Margaret intercepted him, her silver-handled cane blocking his path like a sword. I didn't hear what she said, but I saw his face go pale and his shoulders slump, and I saw him retreat into the crowd. M.Y. mother followed him, weeping. Victor and Celia disappeared. I stood in the center of the garden, surrounded by journalists, investors, and the wreckage of my old life, and I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I had escaped, because I had won. Because I had taken everything they tried to take from me and turned it into something stronger. Because I was not a victim, but I was a Vance. Margaret joined me at the edge of the garden. Your grandfather is rolling in his grave. Which one? Both of them. The one who built the Vance fortune would be horrified that his son tried to sell his granddaughter. The one who married into it would be horrified that you refused to be sold. She smiled, a cold, sharp thing. I'm proud of you. You're the first Vance in 3 generations who understands what this family is supposed to be. And what's that? Survivors, predators, but not of each other. She looked at me, her eyes hard. Your father sold you because he was weak. Your mother let him because she was weaker. Your siblings are parasites who will spend the rest of their lives feeding on whatever scraps they can find. But you're not weak. You're not a parasite. You're a Vance, the real kind. The kind that builds empires instead of tearing them down. I couldn't have done this without you. You could have. You just didn't know it yet. She squeezed my hand. Now, let's go meet your new board of directors. They're terrified of you already. It's excellent. The merger between Vance Capital and the Sterling family's investment portfolio created the third largest private equity firm in North America. I spent the next 10 years building it into the largest. My aunt retired at 80 and died 2 years later, peacefully, in her sleep, with a glass of bourbon on her nightstand and a smile on her face. I gave the eulogy at her funeral, and I told the story of how she had walked down the aisle at my wedding and changed my life. My father died the following year alone in a nursing home I paid for. He never apologized. He never acknowledged what he had done. I paid for the funeral, but did not attend. Victor declared bankruptcy twice. The last I heard, he was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Cleveland, selling used cars. Celia married a tech executive and divorced him 3 years later, taking half his money and moving to Miami. We did not speak. I did not expect we ever would. Nicholas Sterling surprised me. He took the junior partnership, worked harder than anyone expected, and eventually became one of the firm's most valuable assets. We never became friends. Too much had happened for that. But we became something rare. We became allies. We trusted each other because we had seen each other at our worst and survived. And I never remarried, not because I was bitter, because I didn't need to. My life was full, fuller than it had ever been when I was trying to be the daughter my parents wanted, the bride my husband expected, the woman the world told me to be. I was none of those things. I was myself, and myself was enough. The last scene of my story is not one of revenge. It's one of quiet, enduring peace. I am sitting in my office at Vance Tower, looking out at a city that I helped shape. The walls are covered with photographs. My aunt, my employees, my company's first office, a news article about the merger. There is a new contract on my desk, a deal that will reshape the real estate market for the next decade. There is a cup of tea going cold beside my keyboard. And there's a photograph of my wedding day. Not the wedding that almost happened, but the moment I stood in the garden with my aunt beside me and announced my freedom to the world. I keep it there to remind myself what I am capable of, what all women are capable of when they refuse to be sold. Somewhere, a young woman is being told she has no choice. Somewhere, a daughter is being used to pay her family's debts. Somewhere, a bride is walking down an aisle toward a man she didn't choose. And somewhere, she will realize, as I did, that she is not a bargaining chip. She is the one who bargains. And she will win.